Zion, Zion Yud Aleph. A person may give a ma to a grocer or
No,
to a.
no, no. Come back.
I
Zain
went, but
Ches. Zain
I went
Ches.
too far.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Aleph is mine.
That's yours. Okay. Okay. Um, so it should be Zion above
Ches.
Chet. That's good also. Okay, Zion Chet. What is its quantity? When they are numerous, food for 2 meals for all of them. When they are few, the volume of a dried fig, and in the case of transferring on Shabbos for each and every one. And Yossi said, to what do these words apply? To the installation of the Erev, but for the remembrance of the Erev, any amount. So they only required an Erev in courtyards, not to let the children forget. And any food may be used to make an Erev or to accept water or salt. These are the words of Rebbe Eliezer. Excuse me, Rebbe Yeshua says, a loaf is an Erev. Even if it is baked from a sah, but it is broken, it may not be used for an Erev. A loaf worth an Issa, but which is whole, may be used for an Erev. Okay.
Okay. So Yud Aleph is a situation where the where somebody wants to participate in an Eruv, but he doesn't have the food, so he goes to the storekeeper and he says, "Look, I know that the other people in my building are coming to buy food for the Eruv, so let me give you some money for that food, and I'll be part of the that's my participation in the Eruv." Now the problem that we have over here is he didn't make a Kenyan because we have a din that even though min Torah money is kone, right? When you hand over the money for something, that should even from a taltalin for carrying carryable objects, even from a taltalin, you should money should affect the purchase. But Chazal came and said we're not going to let money take effect because of the situation where let's say he went and bought a whole stock of grain and meanwhile, and then there was a fire in the granary, and the owner said, "Look, I don't care. It's his grain. He hasn't taken possession of it." Right? So they
Right.
said, "No. When it comes to metaltalin, you actually have to make a mashicha, a hagbah, some form of actual physical kinyan in order to take possession. Otherwise, it hasn't come into your possession yet." Right? So now here's the guy who's given his money. Nosin Adam ma lechem pani. He gives a coin, a coin to the storekeeper, v'lenachtom, or to the baker, kadesh yizke lo eruv, so that he should have a share in the eruv food. And he said, and Rabbi Eliezer says this. Rabbi Eliezer, he says this is fine. We allow him to make a kinyan in earth because Chazal said that in order to benefit him for in part of the Erev, Chazal said, in this case we'll let the money revert to the Torah den that it makes the kinyan. V'chachamim omrim lo zachu lo ma'osav. Said no, there's no such dispensation. We don't make any changes to the halacha that we said that money does is not koneh. Omodim b'shar kol adam shezachu lo ma'osav. However, if he gave his money to somebody else as to be his shaliach to go and buy food for him, shezachu lo ma'osav, then his money did make the purchase for him. She'ein ma'arvin la'adam ele medato. Well, I don't know why she'ein, because this is actually now almost a separate halacha. I don't know why it would be she'ein. It's not. That's not the reason. It's a separate din. So why do we say let's go back to zachu lo ma'osav? Why in the case when he sends a shaliach? Um, does it work, right? His intention was to send his shaliach to make an eruv before for him with food that he's going to buy from the storekeeper or from the baker, right? So this one,
Right.
so he said to him, basically he said to his shaliach, "Arevli, make me an eruv, make me an eruv," right? And even if the Chenvani himself said Arevli, he takes a share in the Eruv. So instead of um, basically because the owner of the money, because the guy who's sending the money didn't just hand over the money and say give me a share of this. He actually said to his shliach, Arevli, make me part of the Eruv. So there, the Chazals say that the money does actually make the kinyan for him because he didn't just like um, hand over the money. He gave it to the shaliach to do it for him.
Which
Uh,
he does in that case, he would not have to make a kinyan. He's giving him the money,
but
telling him to do
he gave it
something.
to the shaliach, and that it's off his head that now
Right.
he's going to be part of the Eruv. Okay. And now the next halacha is ein ma'arvin la'adam ela midato. So okay, so really it should be a separate sentence that ein ma'arvin la'adam ela midato. You cannot make an arrow for a person without his permission. Okay. And immediately Rabbi Yehuda comes and says, whoa, let's just clarify over here. B'mei dvarim amorim, be'erevei techumin. Only this is talking about an erev techumin where you're telling setting up a person so that he can travel to a neighboring city, right? Because there, it's not a pure benefit, right?
Uh-huh.
Because when you do erev, is it that explicit over here? Okay, now that yeah, so we'll see it explicitly here. Aval be'erevei chatzeros ma'arvin ladata v'shelo midato. When it comes to an erev chatzeros, you can do it with or without his permission. It doesn't matter. Why? She- שלפי שזכין לאדם שלא בפניו, because you're giving somebody 100% pure benefit. There's no loss involved in making erev chatzeros. It just gives him extra rights. It doesn't make any extra. It doesn't cause a loss to him at all. ואין חייבים לאדם שלא בפניו. But when it comes to the erev techomin, there, whatever he gains on the west, he loses on the east.
Mhm.
So there, it's not 100% pure benefit. And therefore you can only make an erev techumin for somebody with his knowledge. Okay, with his consent, that is. All right. Perek Ches. Keitzad mishtatfin betchumin. Okay, so now that we're talking about erev techumin, what is the act? How do you do an erev techumin? Maniach es chavis. He takes a container. Let's just say we call it a chavis, a barrel or we'll just say a container of food. Okay, and he puts it in the place where he wants the Erev to be. The Omer Hare ze lechol b'nei iri, and he says this is for all the people of my town. Lechol mi sheyelech lebeis ha'evel or lebeis ha'mishteh. For anyone who wants to go to a mourner's house or to a simcha on the other in the other direction. V'chol shekibel alav mi ba'od yom, and anyone in his town who accepted that as their eruv before Shabbos comes in, mutar. They're allowed to use that as the eruv techumin to go to the neighboring town. Umishetech shach, but after Shabbos comes in, it's too late. Asur she'ein ma'arvin mishetech shach. You cannot make an eruv after Shabbos is already in. Kamahu shioro. How much food do you have to put in the eruv techumin? Mazon shtei sudas lechol echad. It's got to be enough food for 2 sudas for everyone. Um, for every individual who wants to participate. Misharim lechol adam okay, mazono lechol velo l'Shabbos divrei Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir says you measure how much food you need for each person according to chol, not according to Shabbos, because says Rabbi. Okay, let me finish this over here. Rabbi Yehuda Omer l'Shabbos velo l'chol says no, you use the share of Shabbos meals. V'zeh v'zeh miskavenin l'hakel, and both of them are trying to be makil. It's
Right.
just so it comes out that the halacha is actually going to be the same. It's just a machlokes, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, how much people eat on Shabbos and how much people eat on Chol. Rabbi Meir says people eat less on Chol because it's Chol. On Shabbos you have a nice geschmacka meal and you eat more, and therefore we're going to use the smaller share of Chol. Rabbi Yehuda takes a different view. He says, listen, you're eating 2 meals on Shabbos, whereas you're eating 1 meal on Chol, so therefore you're going to lessen the amount. And I have to say, Lamaise, I feel like Rabbi Meir's got more of a handle on things over here. I mean, speaking personally.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. But at any rate, they're both intended for it to be Makil. So whatever turns out to be the lesser amount, it will be the halacha. Rabbi Yochanan ben Barak Omer, Mikika bepundion me arba sein vesela. It's where you buy, it's a loaf that is bought with a pundion when you have 4 seah per selah.
Mhm.
Whatever those measurements are, it's a loaf that follows those shearing of how much flour you would buy at such a price, and when four se'ai for a selah. Okay. Rabbi Shimon Omer shtei yados lekikar mishalosh lekav. Different shiur, um, uh, which is which turns out to be five and a half eggs. Oh, five and a third eggs, whereas Rabbi Yochanan ben Broka says that it's basically six eggs. So it's not much of a difference between them. Rabbi Shimon says it's slightly smaller. Chetzia lebayis hamanuga. Now we completely context shift, and now that we're talking about shiurim for how much you need
Right.
for the erev to chumin, he says you need half of that amount. Chetzia lebayis hamanuga for a house that's got tsaras. What do you mean you need? What do you need bread for a house with tsaras? It's how much you have to eat, how much the sheer of time. If a person walks into a house that's been declared with saras, he immediately becomes tameh, but his clothing only becomes tameh if he remains inside the house for the amount of time that it takes to eat a chatzi pras. And
Okay.
that's the half that we're talking about over here. Is it's the half of that shear that you need for the Erev Techumin is the shear that you need for your clothes to become tameh and a bias menuga. Chatzi chetzia, and then a quarter, lipsol esagvia, in order to make a person become tame from eating tame food. If a person touches tame food, he doesn't become tame. If a person eats tame food, he only becomes tame personally when he eats the shear of a quarter of this loaf that we're speaking about over here. Okay, so it's a complete tangent that we're talking about, but since we were talking about the shear of how much bread you need for Erev Techumen, we just mentioned these agav. Okay, let's go back to Hey Vav.
Okay. If a town of an individual became public property, we may make an error for its entirety. But if a public town became an individual's, we may not make an error for its entirety, unless we include an area from its equivalent to the town of Hadasha in Judea, which has 50 inhabitants. These are the words of Rebbe Yehuda, and Rebbe Shimon says 3 courtyards containing 2 dwellings. One who was to the east and had told the son, make an arrow for me in the west. To the west, he told the son, make an arrow for me in the east. If the distance from him to his house is 2,000 cubits and his arrow more than that, he is permitted the tchum of his house, but forbidden the tchum of his arrow. If to his erev is 2,000 cubits and to his house more than that, he's forbidden the tchum of his house, but permitted the tchum of the erev. One who places his erev in the extension of a town has accomplished nothing. If he places it beyond the tchum, even 1 cubit, whatever he gains, he loses. The resident of a large town may traverse an entire small town, but the resident of a small town may not traverse an entire large town. How so? One who was in a large town and placed his erev in a small town, or in a small town and placed his erev in a large town, may traverse his entirety and 2,000 cubits beyond. But Rebbe Kiva says he has no more than 2,000 cubits from the place of his erev. Rabbi Akiva said to them, do you not agree with me regarding one who places Erev in a cave that he has no more than 2,000 cubits? They answered him, when is this so? Only when there are no inhabitants in it. But if there had inhabitants in it, he may traverse its entirety and beyond it for 2,000 cubits. Thus it follows that its interior is more lenient than its roof. And concerning the
Oh,
surveyor of it,
whoa. Did you,
going too far?
uh, I'm not sure if you skipped or something. Yeah, but test is for tomorrow. Let's just,
Right. Okay. I did. Okay. Sorry.
okay. Shabbos,
Okay. So here,
test 9.
love tests. You said Zion?
Perek test 9, Mishnah Aleph.
Oh,
Shabbos, yeah?
yeah, but I don't know what I did.
Chapter 16, Mishnah 1.
Oh, test science. I had this is what I had. Okay. All books of Holy Scripture may be saved from the fire, whether we read from them or whether we do not read from them. And even though they are written in any foreign language, they warrant being hidden away. Now, why do we not read from them? Because of the neglect of the lecture hall. We may save the case of the scroll with the scroll and the case of the tefillin with the tefillin, even though there is money in them. To where may we take them for safety? To a blind alley. And Sarah says, even to an open one. We may save enough food for 3 meals, but what is fit for people may be saved for people. What is fit for animals may be saved for animals. How so? If a fire broke out on Sabbath Eve, we may save only enough food for 3 meals. If during the morning, we may save only enough food for 2 meals. In the afternoon, we may save only enough food for 1 meal. Rabbi Yossi says we may always save enough food for 3 meals. We may save a basket full of loaves, even though there's enough in it for 100 meals, or a round cake of pressed figs, or a barrel of wine. And one may say to others, come and save for yourselves. If they were discerning, they would make a reckoning with him after Shabbos, and to where may they take them for safety? To a courtyard provided with an Eruv. Then the Sarah says, even to one not provided with an Eruv. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I got that mixed up. I was in the right place. But
Yeah.
anyway, at Mises. Okay. Okay. Dollar. One may drink over the press, but be warm or cold, and he may be exempt. So says Rav Meir. But Rav Elazar ben Yatzadik says declares him liable. But if we come and say with warm he is liable, with cold he is exempt. If one husks barley, he may husk them one by one and eat. If he husks and put them in his hand, he is liable. If one rubs parched ears of wheat, he may sift them from hand to hand and eat. If he sifted and put them into his lap, he is liable. If one sowed coriander for seed, its plant is exempt. If he sowed it for the sake of the plant, then both of the seed and the plant must be tied. Rav Eliezer says, in the case of dill, the seed, the plant, and thin stalks must be tied. But the cages say both seeds and plant are tied only in the case of pepperwort and eureka. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says the shoots of fenugreek, mustard, and white beans are liable to miser. Reb Eliezer says from the caper tights are given from the stalks, berries, and flowers. And Reb Kiva says only the berries are tight because they constitute the fruit.
Okay.
If one,
No.
that was it. That was it. Okay. Very anxious today, I guess. Okay. Okay. Aleph Vav. And regarding what did they say that her time suffices for her with regard to the first discharge of blood, but with regard to the second discharge, she conveys tumor retroactively for 24 hours. But if she experienced the first discharge as a result of an external stimulus, then even for the second discharge, her time suffices for her. Even though they said that her time suffices for her, she is still required to examine herself, except for Anida, and a woman who is observing her days of tahor blood. And similarly, when she engages in marital relations, she must examine herself with examination cloths, except for one who is observing her days of tahor blood, and a virgin whose bloods are tahor. And twice each day she must make examinations in the morning and in the evening, and also when she prepares herself to have marital relations. Further obligated, they are kohanas when they wish to eat truma. When Rehuda says also after they have finished eating truma. Any hand that examines excessively is among women praiseworthy, but among men let it be cut off. A woman who is deaf, deranged, a blind woman, or a woman who has lost her mind, if they have mentally competent women is available to them, those women should prepare and they may eat truma. In the practice of the daughters of Israel that they cohabitate with 2 examination cloths prepared, one for the husband and one for the wife, and the pious women prepare for themselves a 3rd examination cloth to prepare the house.
Okay. That's it.
Okay. And on to
Berlin.
Okay, Yud Aleph base. How many are considered many? Beis Shammai says 2, says 2 sheep as it is stated, a man will sustain a calf and 2 sheep. Beis Hillel says 5 as it is stated, 5 prepared sheep. Reb Dosa ben Harkinis says 5 sheep, each of which is shorn of a mana and a half. I'm subject to the law of the first of the fleece. But they can come and say 5 sheep that are shorn of any amount. How much must we give him? The weight of 5 selim in Judea, which are equivalent to 10 selim in Galilee. Bleached but not dirty, enough to make a small garment out of it. As it is stated, you shall give it to him, and there should be enough in it for a gift. But if he did not manage to give it to him and he dyed it, he's exempt. If he bleached it but did not dye it, he's obligated. If one buys the fleece of a Gentile sheep, he is exempt from the first of the fleece. If one buys the fleece of another sheep, if the seller slept over seller left some over and the seller is obligated. If he did not leave anything over, the buyer is obligated. If he had 2 kinds, dark ones and white ones, and he sold them the dark ones but not the white ones, the males but not the females, this one must give for himself and that one must give for himself. The mitzvah of sending away from the nest applies both in the land and outside the land, when the temple exists and when the temple does not exist, to unconsecrated birds, but not to consecrated birds. The stringency of the mitzvah of covering the blood over the mitzvah of sending away from the rest of the nest is the mitzvah of covering. The blood applies to both beast and fowl, whether at one's disposal or at not one's disposal, whereas the mitzvah of sending away from the nest applies only to fowl and applies only to those not at one's disposal. Which are those not at one's disposal? Examples are geese and chickens that nested in the orchard, but if they nested in the house, and similarly Herodian doves, he is exempt from sending them away. One is exempt from sending away a non-kosher bird. If a non-kosher bird sits on the eggs of a kosher bird, or a kosher bird sits on the eggs of a non-kosher bird, one is exempt from sending it away. A male partridge, Reb Eliezer rules that one is obligated to send it away, but the comment exempt.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to finish this tomorrow and then go on to. No, that's it. No, we still have
We're
we
not
have still three to go tomorrow.
Yeah,
But after that, we're going to go somewhere
you're
else.
right. Hang on, you're right. It's Shlichus Kenny is the last period. Okay,
Three
yes,
left,
last one. Okay, so after Chulin is Bechoros.
of course. Okay. 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 Uh, Zion Dalit.
Zain Hey.
Zion Havens. All right. In what manner were the blessings of the curses recited? As soon as Israel crossed the Jordan, they came to Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal, and that are in the vicinity of Samaria near Shechem, near Elon Moreh, as it is said, are they not across the Jordan? And over it states, and Avram passed through the land until the place of Shechem, until Elon Moreh. And just as Elon Moreh, there is Shechem. So Elon Moreh, here is Shechem. Six tribes ascended to the top of Mount Gerizim, and six to the top of Mount Abel, where the Kohanim, the Levim, and the ark stood below, in between. The Kohanim surrounded the ark, the Levim surrounded the Kohanim, and all the Israel were on this side and that, as it is said. And all of Israel with his elders, its officers, and its judges stood on this side and on that side of the ark. They turned their faces towards Mount Gerizim and began with blessing. Blessed is the man who does not make a graven or molded image. And these are those responded, Amen. They turned their faces toward Abel and began with the curse. Cursed is the man who makes a graven or molded image. And those responded, Amen. They continued in this manner until they completed all the blessings and curses. Afterwards, they brought the stones. They built an altar, plastered it with lime, and inscribed upon it all the words of the Torah in 70 languages that is said, explain well. Then they took the stones and came and spent the night in their place. In what manner was the blessing of the Kohanim pronounced? In the provinces, they pronounced it as three blessings, but in the temple as one. In the temple, he pronounced the name as it was written by the provinces with his cognomen. In the provinces, the Kohanim raised their hands to shoulder height, but in the temple above their heads, except for the Kohen Gadol, who does not raise his hands above the sits. The Yehuda says even the Kohen Gadol raises his hands above the sits, as it is said, and Aaron raised his hands for the people, and he blessed them, and he blessed them. Okay.
And one more.
Right. In one manner were the blessings of the Kohen Gadol recited. The attendant of the synagogue takes a Torah scroll and gives it to the head of the synagogue. The head of the synagogue gives it to the deputy Kohen Gadol, and the deputy gives it to the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol stands up and accepts the scroll and reads while standing. He reads from the passage that begins after the death, and the passage that begins but on the 10th. Then he rolls up the Torah scroll, puts it in his bosom, and says, there is more than I have read to you written here, and he recites by heart from the book of Numbers, the beginning on the 10th. Then he recites it over 8 benedictions for the Torah, for the sacrificial service, and for the thanksgiving for the forgiveness of sin, for the temple, for Israel, for the Kohanim, and for the rest of the prayer.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Have a good day.
Have a great day. Joy, thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.